This is something that's going to be a hard pill for a lot of you to swallow. At a certain point, there's going to have to come a time when you have to unlearn the behaviors that are holding you back. Behaviors that are keeping you from becoming the best version of yourself. And I know it's difficult to do that when your environment makes those negative habits seem like the normal thing to do. How many times do you see it when people have been doing the exact same toxic behaviors for years and years on end? Where do you think they end up? Probably not in the position that they want to be in, nor do they want to become the people they want to become. So there's absolutely going to have to come a time when you got to ditch the vices and start taking life more serious. And in my opinion, the sooner the better. I didn't cut all that bullshit out until a year or two ago. And at the time, I didn't even realize that it was holding me back because what I was doing just seemed like the normal thing to do. Go out and party every weekend, get drunk, get fucked up, not prioritize things that I know I needed to do in order to become a better person. So how can I really blame people when their environment is like that? Because a lot of the times they're just too blind to see what's actually happening. So it's so easy for me to say just replace your negative habits with positive ones. But why is it that no one actually ends up doing that? It goes in one ear and out the other when I say it. It's because they're following the social norms within their environment. They're following the social norms of society. So what do? Ideally, you would separate yourself, but separating yourself from those types of environments can be extremely difficult, especially when it's something you've always been a part of. Maybe you've had the same friend group since like middle school or high school or something, and they have been your people from almost day one. It's going to be pretty hard to separate yourself or cut those people off. Now, I'm not saying you have to completely cut them off and never talk to them again. What I am saying is putting your own priorities above the norms of society. And I just went through something like this not too long ago, actually. So this is something that's very relevant to me. And I have a lot of empathy for those currently in the situation that I was in about a year or two ago, because they don't actually see what's happening. Again, because when you're in a toxic environment, it makes toxic and shitty behaviors seem like the normal thing to do. So if all your friends party every weekend, get super drunk, do recreational drugs, eventually if you're around those things enough, you're going to start adopting those habits. And maybe you're going to go against your values because you want to fit in. You don't want to seem like an outcast in the group and be the only sober one when you're going out. That's what happened to me. When I was growing up, I was against doing all those crazy things because my parents instilled these values in me to be a goody two-shoes. Now, I'm not saying you need to be a goody two-shoes by any means, but it's important you stay true to your values. So what I noticed is that once I became more independent and started to form my own values, I formed my own values and norms based off the group that I was in, based off of the environment that I was in. I found myself in a group that parties all the time, and I still love all those people to death. They are my people, and I'm still in contact with a lot of them. However, I just don't go out and party as much as I used to with them. Anyway, so guess what happened when I started to put myself in that environment? I started to party every weekend, get fucked up, do things that I never thought I would actually do, only because my environment made those things seem like the normal thing to do. And I wanted to fit in. And I know this is something a lot of people struggle with, fitting in. So if I wasn't going out and partying every weekend and getting completely hammered, I felt like the outcast. And this lasted years and years, actually. And guess how much I grew as an individual? Not much, if at all. I was basically an 18-year-old living in a 23-year-old's body. It wasn't until I started to separate myself from that environment that I started to progress as an individual. Not only my physique progressed significantly, but also my mind and who I was becoming as a person. And these things actually just seemed to fall in place. Because again, I was so blinded by what I was doing because of my environment that I didn't even realize these things were holding me back. So what I mean, things just sort of fell into place and I had to naturally separate myself from this environment was because I finished college and started working a 9-to-5 job. I had very little free time. And that's when I started to realize this. I was forced to take a step back and work. And at the time, this kind of pissed me off because I was missing out on so many parties, festivals and raves and shit. But over time, I started to reflect more and more, and I started to understand what was actually happening. When I was separated from that environment, I sort of got to see it from a bird's eye view and realized that my previous environment was holding me back. Then when I was placed into a new environment, I noticed I started to progress a lot as an individual. So how can you apply this? Well, the answer is very simple, but it's not easy. You really want to reflect on the person you want to become and the things you want to accomplish and somehow force your way into an environment where those actions that are conducive to that individual are the norm. But this is extremely difficult because how do you find that environment when it may or may not be aligned with social norms? Because you probably grew up with the same friend group who just happen to be individuals in that environment and end up being part of the problem that you're trying to escape. What I mean by this is everyone that you know super well and grew up with practices these toxic norms or are doing things that don't align with the person that you want to become. Again, this is very common because we've all had that one group that we grew up with and you don't really want to just separate yourself with them because you feel comfortable in that group. So again, how do you force yourself in a positive environment where the norms are conducive with who you want to become? Well, I'm only speaking from experience here, but in this case, what I did is that the internet became my best friend. So you might be asking, how did I leverage the internet to put myself in a positive environment with social norms that were aligned with who I wanted to become? So since I didn't have a lot of accolades to be around those individuals, I had to put my mind in that environment. So how do you do that? Well, actually, funny enough, I would just binge watch YouTube videos, consume social media content that were related to who I wanted to become or who I wanted to work on in my spare time. So for me, when I consume content from others who are inspiring, it signals to my brain that what I see in that video is the social norm. So if you distance yourself from the toxic norms and place your mind in the positive norms, then it's gonna make it so much easier for you to escape from a toxic environment. So yeah, instead of going out and partying on the weekends, I would sit at home and watch YouTube videos alone. And at first, it was pretty lonely, I'm not gonna lie. And you're probably gonna struggle with that as well, the feeling of loneliness, because you're gonna feel like an outcast. But eventually, if you just stick with it for a few weeks, then your mind will convince you that what you see online is real. Now that might sound kind of weird, but let me give you an example. So when I was really trying to focus on getting in great shape, building muscle, and building a physique that I can be proud of, I would binge watch social media content relating to fitness. Everyone knows the saying, you are what you eat, but in this case, you become what you consume. So this was the first step I took, and this actually helped a lot. And at first, it's gonna be very hard to also decipher between what is good information and what is bad information, but over time, you'll just learn. So if you wanna take it a step further, join communities or masterminds within the topic or niche that you wanna get involved with. This will make positive norms feel even more real and will make you feel like less of an outcast because you can actually talk to people who want to achieve or have already achieved the things you want. So this is what I've done recently, and it has been a complete game changer for me. But I will say, best case scenario out of all of this is if you can find people you know in real life that want the same things as you and are willing to make sacrifices for those things. But at the same time, if you want to achieve great things, it's going to be very difficult to find other people in real life who want to achieve great things. So I'm just going to use another example, my social media. No one I grew up with or anyone that I've hung out with recently does anything on social media like I do. No one I know in real life is trying to build a personal brand. So when I first started doing it, I felt pretty uncomfortable because I felt like an outcast, because no one else was doing it within my personal environment. Since obviously for 99% of the population, posting on social media, talking to a camera like this is not the norm. But now that I joined a community of people doing the same thing as me, it does seem like the norm. And I have zero fear about posting because everyone else is doing it in my community. And those are the people who I talk to on a consistent basis. And I don't feel like an outcast there. But if I try to explain my social media content to my friends and family that I grew up with, that's when I start feeling like an outcast because no one else is doing it there. So hopefully this all makes sense for you. And I hope this video gives you an idea on how you can reframe your mind to adopt positive norms. Norms that progress you as an individual, even if you might feel like an outcast in your everyday life. So shed the old habits and mentally surround yourself with positive norms that are gonna get you closer to the person you wanna become. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys need me to clarify anything, you can leave it down in the comments. You can message me on Instagram. I literally get back to everyone. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed and have a good day.